So for those who aren't in the know, one of the things trending in the Mario Kart 8 community is the new MK8DX ranking account. It is the latest attempt to accurately grade the top 100 players around the community. How does it do? Well, I think it does a better job than a lot of prior attempts. All player rankings made up to this point have been pretty influenced by bias, this one included, but at the very least I appreciate the attempt to quote, explain why certain players are ranked where they are. Unfortunately, these explanations fall pretty flat when immediately you realize that the two most influential categories on this ranking are made up of entirely biased takes and considerations from a small council. It's okay, y'all. No longer will our player rankings be 100% based on the personal thoughts of a few people, because now it's only 67% based on that. Hooray for progress! Perhaps it's weird to have people grading people on calling abilities when they've never been in a call with them in their life, and maybe even the combination of multiple bries indicate that maybe the graders don't really know anything about the players they're assessing. But all jokes aside, I like the graphics they're doing with the FIFA cards. They're pretty fun, and it's not like this is an official ranking or anything. Nothing was stopping other people from doing their own rank, and unofficial rankings only matter as much as the community allows them to matter at the end of the day. The actual graders didn't even do a bad job, I think. I'm not calling them biased because I think they're biased people or anything. It's just a fact that any ranking not based entirely off of merit and achievement alone is biased by necessity. The rankings are not what I want to focus on today, though. It's the categories themselves. What I want to talk about is what makes a good MK player. What would be my categories for the FIFA cards? Well, first off, there are some categories I would personally delete. Ironically, they are the categories deemed most important by the ranking we discussed earlier. War, Mogi, and achievement scores. When it comes to making actual rankings, I guess those categories make for an easier grade, but my job isn't to make a ranking here, it's to talk about the skills that make up a good player. The reason why I get rid of these categories is simple. For Wars and Mogis, the skills I propose will entirely make up what your skill is in these modes anyway. For instance, having good communication will help make you a good war player that's valuable in 6 vs 6. Having good front-running ability helps to make you a good war and Mogi player as well. Really, it's something that's helpful in all formats. By including match format abilities as categories, we aren't really adding anything that isn't already defined by the other abilities. How good you are at teams can be described in its entirety by the other skills we go over. As for achievements, I don't think there's much use for them here either. Now personally, I think ranking should be determined entirely on the things a player achieves. This leaves out personal biases. But this video isn't about making rankings. It's about what makes a good Mario Kart player. Winning tournaments doesn't make you a great player. Being a great player wins you tournaments. Besides, it's really hard to take anything away from achievements with how our community's set up personally right now. I believe I would have one of the higher achievement scores on the list if I were on it, because I've been surrounded with good teammates in many 6 vs 6 and, Mogi tournaments over the years. I also used to do pretty well in FFA events, but achievements don't really describe your ability in the present. So what categories would I settle on? Well, let's go through the 6 I would propose. The first is I would take the run category and rename it to speed. This is because I would kind of want to break the run category down. To start, going overall speed makes sense, or how capable a player is of driving quickly. We know this is useful because being fast will allow yourself to break away, win face-offs, and avoid some bad situations in general. Secondly, I want to introduce the consistency stat. In a sense, this is an extension of the run category. This is just an ability for a player to play at their best level without messing up. Some of the fastest players in the world aren't consistent like other people. And not being able to consistently take advantage of your speed does not mean that your speed isn't there, but speed just isn't everything. Consistency also relates to many other facets of the game. It is just an ability to be able to live up to your standards every time you play the game. Before I get into number 3, I want to say that I'm getting rid of the items category because I think there's multiple ways to describe, how items are used. And that can start with number 3, decision making. I think one item category is just not descriptive enough, kind of like with running and consistency. Decision making also has more to do than just items. This is the ability for a player to correctly come to the best conclusions. This category is more of a test of if a player can diagnose what's right and wrong in general. Number 4, playmaking. Initially, I wanted to call this one accuracy or perhaps even execution, but execution is too similar to consistency in my opinion, and accuracy implies that you must have an item in hand to playmake. The playmaking ability is the ability to execute on decisions that you make for the most part. There are a lot of players who have the right idea but aren't able to win because they are not accurate and get punished for missing. Playmaking, I think, is a huge factor in what differentiates great players and elite players, and I think lumping it into just the items territory is wrong. Number 5, awareness. So what differentiates this from decision making is that awareness is more so just the ability to quickly read what is happening and to pick up on patterns. A player could come up with the right answer to a situation every time, but it means nothing if they don't diagnose a situation in a timely manner. Awareness has a lot to do with things like map reading and understanding space, and I would consider these categories almost like a three-parter. Awareness is what alerts you to the problems and forces you to make a decision. Decision making has to do if you can actually make the correct decision. And even if you make the right decision, you have to be able to execute on said decision, which typically comes down to playmaking ability. Finally, I'm going to retitle the call category to communication. While we mostly consider this a call thing, I'd classify communication as just the ability to put yourself in teammates in optimal positions to win, either through calling or potentially even just understanding how certain players and opponents react to certain situations in the game. This obviously factors into team play more, but Mogies and Wars are so prominent in the competitive game that I think it is fine as a gradable criteria. So anyways, these are the 6 categories I have. All I believe are unique traits that factor into your overall skill as a player. Perhaps you could even define a player and their abilities entirely with these 6 traits. You could hypothetically make a ranking based on all these traits, but as mentioned, there isn't really a way to accurately grade anything outside of achievements, but it is fun to think about how would you grade yourself and consider what you need to focus on. So, did I miss anything? Let me know if there's any secret 7th factor that I've missed. One I thought about was mentality, but personally I see that as an outside of the game thing. I also believe if your mental isn't in check that can be described by having poor consistency. So I think I've defined everything pretty well still. So anyways, that's all I got for now. Look forward to reading some comments. Until next time.